There's a new STOL event in town, and we're going to talk about it today in the hangar. Welcome to In the Hangar. I'm Christy Wong, and today with me is Doug Jackson.
Hi.
Doug, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, we're going to start off just by talking a little bit about you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into aviation?
Well, I kind of got into the tail dragger thing with the Citabria and moved up to a twin, which I have now, a Cessna 340, and then kind of started watching all this big tire stuff going on, you know. That's the thing nowadays, big tires. And so I thought, well, you know, I went to a fly-in where there was this really unique airplane. Ended up buying this airplane because I've always liked stuff that no one else had, you know. And bought this thing, we call it, you can call it the Cessna Cub or the Badlands Traveler or the Franken Cub. It's a Super Cub with Cessna. This particular one has Cessna 172 wings. Bought one before that, actually had 152 wings. So kind of got into this thing and started flying with a group of guys called the Brazos River Rats. And that's a Facebook group. And we go out on the rivers and land on sandbars and have fun, you know. And so we get to talking over time about, wow, you know, we ought to, somebody ought to do another event. I thought, you know, I'm going to start pursuing this. Made a Facebook page, and here we are.
For those of our audience members and viewers that don't know what STOL means, let's talk about that. What is STOL?
Well, STOL stands for short takeoff and landing, and has with a lot of sports and a lot of activities through the years, through all of time. Sometimes necessity was the mother of invention. And in the backcountry of Alaska and Canada, the only place to get to a lot of those places is by plane. And a lot of times there's no runway. It's literally you're landing on a river bar or on a little short place, you know, that most people would never in a million years think of landing. So they started, the Cubs were, the old J3 Cub was the first, and then the Super Cub came along, and nowadays they use everything from, you know, Cubs to the 172s, 182s, 206s, 207s. Now they've got the Pilatuses and all this stuff. But so it came about from just trying to service these backcountry, these not really backcountry, but these remote outposts or hunters or, you know, whatever it became. And that's where STOL came from, was all these pilots gathered somewhere at some point in time, and, you know, probably over a couple of beers one night, they said, you know, I bet I can land shorter than you, or I bet I can take off shorter than you.
Yeah, that's usually how it happens.
Yeah, and so that became a sport.
Have you ever seen a big tire warrior?
Not yet, but I hope it'll show up at the event.
Next time in the hangar. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about this particular event then. So you talked about, all right, so I think I can do that, is what you said.
Yeah.
And now you're actually doing it. So let's talk about where and when the North Texas STOL event is going to be.
Yeah, so, I said, yeah, I can do this. That's easy. And boy, was I wrong. There's a lot.
Famous last words.
There is a lot to putting on an event like this, as we've learned. So first I had to the very first thing we had to do was find some place to have it. Well, so in talking to my rat buddies, we call us the guys that I fly with, they told me what they didn't like about the other events. And while the events were fantastic, there was a few things that probably could have been better. One of the first things was where they had it was a little bit remote. And one of the biggest complaints was people couldn't watch it. You know, they stuck them out way out here on the backside of an airport. And so all your spectators over half a mile away watching a plane land in a couple of 100 feet or much shorter. And so spectators didn't like it. So I took everything and I made notes. And I've got this book. I should have brought it. It's just notes after notes, probably 50 pages of notes that I took. And then I started to think, okay, where could I have this? Well, the first thing I thought of was Gainesville, because I know that airport and I know how friendly they are to aviation, which, by the way, if anybody's watching, these guys are awesome. They've been unbelievable to deal with. Everything that I've asked Dave, the airport manager, he said, sure, So we've got Jerry Drew as our air boss, and Jerry has been the air boss of Valdez. He's been one of the assistant air bosses at Oshkosh, just an amazing guy, ex-FAA guy. We've got the famous John Jughead Council as our announcer. Then everything just started falling in place. We have Aviat Husky as our title sponsor. We've got Ladd Gardner Insurance as our presented by sponsor. We've got Cub Crafters, one of their dealers, Mike Sasser. He's one of our sponsors. We've got Acme Aero. We've got TK1 Racing, which builds the big shocks that are on my airplane. And just tons of people. Mark Patey with Best Tugs is one of my sponsors. Clint Busnich owns Vetterman Exhaust that built my airplane. He's one of my sponsors. So it's amazing the turnout that we got. And so things started coming together, and then I started wanting to put a Texas twist on it. Something, everybody has an awards banquet. It's so boring to go to those. It just is. You hand the guy his trophy, and then you have to sit there and listen to people talk. We didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that. So we decided to have a crawfish bowl.
Excellent.
And so the winner of each of our 5 classes gets a belt buckle, and got a couple of surprises for some other folks that'll get those too.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's actually a perfect segue into my next question. So let's talk about the competition itself. What exactly are people competing to do? What are the classes you guys are putting together?
Well, yeah, it's real detailed and real complex. You take off and we measure it, and then you land and we measure it. So
Yeah.
it's very high tech. That's really about it. We will have guys, and I'll talk about this in a minute about some of the guys that are coming to this. This is what really blew me away. But we'll have your average Super Cub style plane that'll take off, and let's call it 150 feet. And we'll take off, and we call it flights. We'll have what's called an alpha group, an alpha flight. That'll be alpha 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 planes. They will take off. 1, 45 seconds later, 2, and we'll time it so by the time number 1 or Alpha 1 gets back on final, number 5 will be taken off. And we'll measure their takeoffs. And let's say you're Alpha 1 and you have a takeoff of 150 feet. Can you come back around? You land. Let's say your landing is 125 feet. Well, if I can do math, and that's 275 points. So the lowest score wins. And you were going to get at least 2 attempts. And hopefully we're going to, depending on the number of pilots, we'll get in a 3rd round. And so your best combination, you can't take like this landing and that takeoff. It's got to be the best combination from 1 attempt will be your score. And there was 5 classes. Your classes are heavy touring, which that's your 182s, 185s, all those planes. Your light touring, which would be your 170s, your 120s, your 152s. And by the way, it doesn't have to have big tires. It doesn't have to have the little tire in the back. It can have the little tire in the front. We'll make fun of you, but we're going to have you. No, we don't. We found that 182s are very competitive at this. 182s are very, very capable airplanes.
I bring the Warrior. I'm not ashamed.
Sure.
You can make fun of me all you want.
You'd be surprised how much fun you would have, number one. And if you're really good, and you could have that day, and you could take home a trophy. But so we've got light touring. Now we're moving to what everyone wants to see, which is the Bush class. And that's all your Super Cubs, your certified backcountry big tire airplanes. And then the next class down is what we call alternate bush or heavy experimental, and that's what I have. And that's, gosh, there's so many planes out there, but the thing that most people will see is the Carbon Cub. Everybody knows what a Carbon Cub is. So there'll be a ton of Carbon Cubs in that particular class. And then your last class, not the last, but the last one I'll talk about, is your LSA or light, or what we call light experimental. And that's where it gets really interesting, because you're going to see some guys. We're going to have a guy there. that will, his combination, if he's on his game, his combination now of takeoff and landing will probably be 25 to 50 feet.
What?
Yeah, it's insane. His name is Dan Reynolds, and Dan hails from about 80 miles east of the Alaskan border in the Yukon Territory of Canada. And he called me and he said, I'm coming down to your event. I'm going to take the wings off my airplane and trailer it down there. It's like, wow.
Wow.
Because I've watched him. If you're into STOL, you have your heroes, and your guys that are really, really good at it. And he's one of them, and Dan's coming. As are a lot of those Valdez guys.
Is this event just for pilots, or is this an event that people can come and bring their families?
Absolutely. Aviation, as we all know, is not what it was 30 years ago. It's growing again, thank God. And this sport has been, I think this backcountry thing has a lot to do with that, but we want everyone to attend. We're hoping for 2,000 spectators. That would make my day to see all those little kids lined up, because this is not an exclusive sport. By all means, we want everyone to come.
Excellent. So when is the event?
So the actual competition will be on March the 14th. We're going to open the field on March the 12th for fly-in camping. That's on a Thursday. Friday morning, we're going to host some fly-outs to some area grass strips and stuff. And then after lunch on Friday, we'll open it up to practice. This will go out live stream, YouTube and Facebook, and a couple other mediums that I'm not familiar with that they know about. I was told yesterday that we have about 2 million potential viewers for this event.
That's incredible.
For an event that I thought up 6 weeks ago, I guess, 7 weeks ago. So.
That's pretty awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming and telling us all about this. So, all right, March 14th, Gainesville, Texas. That's GLE.
That's
Come to the STOL event, and if you can't, then chances are you could probably see it streamed somewhere. Thank you so much for coming. All right, you guys, we'd love to see you there at the STOL event. And if you have any questions, definitely go to the website, LoneStar STOL.
LoneStarStole.com.
LoneStarStole.com.
Facebook at LoneStar Stole.
And we'll see you next time in the hangar.